Overseas to the terrifying attack on holiday shoppers, an SUV used as a weapon on the streets of Melbourne, Australia. The scene of chaos afterward. The driver pinned on the ground, a trail of injured people left behind. Tonight, police are calling it a, quote, deliberate act, but so far, not terrorism.
Frenzied chaos on a busy Australian street. This mangled wreck, the weapon in what authorities are calling a deliberate act. Witnesses say the white SUV ran red lights before slamming into pedestrians.
There were people screaming and running separate directions, thinking it was a bomb.
Injuring 18, one still in critical condition tonight. This man dragged from the SUV, officers seen holding him down and slapping him. Authorities saying there is so far no link to terrorism, but the suspect was known to police.
He is a 32-year-old Australian citizen of Afghan descent and has a history of drug use as well as mental health issues.
A similar incident in January killed 6 people right around the corner.
Shocking and surprising that it's happened again.
Concrete blocks were installed to prevent more vehicle attacks, but tonight, Melbourne is shaken again. Tonight, the suspect is still in the hospital where police are yet to formally interview him. They're still looking for a motive for this latest vehicle attack.
And just as millions travel, the new security warning just out for Christmas, what authorities are now saying about potential threats from New York City to Washington, D.C. to Las Vegas. Security stepped up in New York's Times Square, and in Las Vegas, they are installing barriers to now keep cars off sidewalks. ABC's Lindsay Davis with the warning from Homeland Security tonight. They want everyone to hear it.
Tonight, with tens of millions of Americans on the move, the Department of Homeland Security with that new call for vigilance. As you travel, shop, and gather together to celebrate the holiday season, we ask you to stay alert. Heightened security here in New York City after those 2 terror attacks in the past 8 weeks. The Halloween truck attack that killed 8 and the Port Authority ISIS-inspired subway bombing last week. The city is deploying special explosive detection canine teams, radiation detection devices, and hundreds of additional officers.
Around the world, you're seeing increased tensions, so we think this is a prudent action.
In Washington, D.C., extra precautions after just days ago, an ISIS-inspired group sent out posters showing the famed Washington National Cathedral on fire. Backpacks and oversized bags will no longer be permitted inside the National Cathedral. And in Las Vegas, the city is installing 800 safety posts along the Strip to stop potential vehicle attacks and sending in a record number of National Guard soldiers.
On Thursday, U.S. senators from both major parties urged federal authorities to halt planned expansion of a $1 billion airport facial scanning program. Parties argued that the technology used to vet travelers on departing international flights at 9 airports may not be accurate enough. Senators raised concerns that too many travelers would be inconvenienced by faulty scan results and questioned why Americans are being subjected to the screens. The Department of Homeland Security has said that it hopes to have some form of biometric exit face scanning at all the largest U.S. international airports in 2018.
Burger chain Cali Burger has invented a machine along with the NEC Corporation of America that uses facial recognition technology to remember customers and their past orders. Now, Cali Burger customers can order simply by smiling at a kiosk. The burger chain has already introduced burger flipping robots in its kitchens. The self-ordering kiosks were unveiled on Tuesday. For now, they'll only be tested at one location in Pasadena, California. If all goes well, the chain plans to roll out the self-ordering face-recognizing kiosks at all 40 locations in 2018.
Adopted. A strong message from the international community to the United States. Jerusalem cannot be recognized as Israel's capital. At an emergency session at the UN, 128 countries voted in favor of a resolution to effectively make US President Donald Trump's decision on Jerusalem null and void.
It is shameful for the United Nations that I must stand before you today. It is shameful that this meeting is even taking place. Jerusalem is the holiest place on earth for the Jewish people. It is the capital of the state of Israel. Period.
Now, European democracies and allies, U.S. allies, Britain, France, Germany, Japan, all voted against the U.S. It's not the revanchist right in Europe. It's Theresa May, Emmanuel Macron, Angela Merkel voting against the U.S. All this despite America's warning that the United States could withhold billions of dollars in taxpayer funds and aid to nations voting against the U.S.
Joining the U.S. and Israel in the vote, just Guatemala, Honduras, Marshall Islands, Micronesia, Nauru, Palau, and Togo.
Here is the UN ambassador, Nikki Haley, with some stern words earlier today. Roll tape.
We will remember it when we are called upon to once again make the world's largest contribution to the United Nations. And we will remember it when so many countries come calling on us, as they so often do, to pay even more and to use our influence for their benefit. America will put our embassy in Jerusalem. That is what the American people want us to do. And it is the right thing to do. No vote in the United Nations will make any difference on that. But this vote will make a difference on how Americans look at the UN and on how we look at countries who disrespect us in the UN. And this vote will be remembered.
Turkey, which sent its foreign minister to New York for the vote, says such threats are unacceptable.
From now, we will spend more effort to make sure that the state of Palestine is recognized with its 1960 borders.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu also said afterward that he totally rejects what he called the preposterous resolution, but he took the time to thank nations that chose to abstain.
Israel completely rejects this preposterous resolution. Jerusalem is our capital, always was, always will be. But I do appreciate the fact that a growing number of countries refuse to participate in this theater of the absurd. So I appreciate that, and especially I want to again express our thanks to President Trump and Ambassador Haley for their stalwart defense of Israel and their stalwart defense of the truth.
A skull-shaped asteroid whizzed past Earth on Halloween of 2015. That roughly 2,100-foot wide space rock is due to return in 2018, but that visit won't be quite as perfectly timed. Astronomers estimate it will fly by in mid-November. Scientists are looking forward to getting another look at the asteroid, which is officially named 2015 TB145 and commonly referred to as the Halloween Death Asteroid. Last time around, researchers were able to determine its overall shape was, from certain angles, rather skull-like. Also apparent were the large, perfectly placed craters that resembled eye sockets, a mouth opening, and a nasal cavity. 2018 will mark the asteroid's last visit for some time. It's not expected to return until 2088.
Saudi Aramco, the world's largest oil company, was the victim of a cyber attack targeting its safety systems. That's the big reveal at Foreign Policy, which Aramco denies. It's the first ever example of malware targeting computer systems designed to prevent industrial disasters. Cybersecurity experts suspect Iran or Russia of being behind the attack, but say they can't be sure of responsibility.
North Korea isn't too happy. The U.S. blamed the country for the WannaCry ransomware attack that happened earlier this year. According to state media, a spokesperson for North Korea's Ministry of Foreign Affairs said the country had nothing to do with the cyber attack, which infected hundreds of thousands of computers worldwide. The spokesperson added the North won't tolerate reckless accusations by the U.S., but it's unclear exactly how it may retaliate. On Monday, U.S. President Donald Trump's Homeland Security advisor Tom Bossert wrote an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal that publicly accused North Korea of orchestrating the attack. Bossert later elaborated during a White House briefing with reporters.
Some of the benefit that comes from this attribution is letting them know that we're going to move to stop their behavior. Now to another daring escape from the north of the border. A North Korean soldier defected to the south through the demilitarized zone on Thursday, prompting troops on both sides of the DMZ to fire shots. It's the second such defection in 5 weeks, and it's led many to ask whether these defections point to growing instability within the ranks of the North Korean military.
A low-ranking North Korean soldier defected to South Korea through the demilitarized zone on Thursday. According to South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff, the soldier appeared in front of a guard post on the Midwestern Front at just past 8 a.m., and South Korean guards and surveillance equipment identified him. He was safely secured, and now related institutions will be investigating why and how the soldier crossed over. He's known to have brought his own AK-47 rifle. The defection led to an exchange of gunfire at the border. At 9:24 a.m., the South Korean military turned on warning broadcasts and fired 20 rounds of a K3 machine gun as they found several North Korean soldiers approaching the military demarcation line, searching for the defector.
Vice President Mike Pence made a surprise trip to Afghanistan today. There, the vice president met with Afghan President Ashraf Ghani, discussing the U.S.'s changing military strategies and progress against terrorist groups. Pence said, quote, "We believe that we are now on a path to achieving a lasting victory for freedom and security in Afghanistan." After the meeting, Pence visited the Bagram Air Base to rally U.S. troops. Pence is now the highest-ranking Trump White House official to visit an active U.S. combat zone. For safety reasons, it was planned in secret.
Over the past few years, something's been happening in the small East African nation of Djibouti. China has been setting up a military base. It's the country's first overseas military base. It's also a stone's throw from Camp Lemonnier, the U.S.'s only permanent military base in Africa. Italy, Japan, and France also have bases in Djibouti. But while the U.S. has warm relations with those countries, China is a rival power. China says the base will be used for logistical support for UN peacekeeping missions and Chinese Navy escort missions in the region. But U.S. defense officials fear that China may use its close proximity to Camp Lemonnier as an opportunity to gather intelligence. China's deep economic ties to Djibouti may also pose a problem for the U.S. China has invested heavily in Djibouti's infrastructure, including ports and a major railway. There's worry China may leverage these investments to weaken U.S.-Djibouti security ties.
The International Committee of the Red Cross says more than 1 million people in Yemen have cholera in what they call a hideous milestone. Yemen is in the midst of a civil war between Houthi rebels and the forces of President Abd Rabbo Mansour Hadi, backed by a Saudi-led military coalition. A Saudi blockade has exacerbated the humanitarian crisis, with an estimated 80% of Yemenis not having adequate access to food, fuel, clean water, and health care. Hospitals have been crippled by a lack of medicine, and some have been damaged in Saudi airstrikes. The United Nations has called the cholera outbreak the worst in the world and has said Yemen is on the brink of famine, with 1.8 million acutely malnourished children. Since April, over 2,200 Yemenis have died of the easily treatable disease, and without clean water, that number is expected to rise. New Delhi is battling air pollution with an anti-smog gun. The water cannon shoots droplets in the air in an effort to diffuse air pollutants. The Indian Medical Association declared a public health emergency in November as thick smog hovered over the city. Delhi's Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal called it a, quote, gas chamber. The city's environmental department and the Delhi Pollution Control Committee tested the cannon for its trial run on December 20th in eastern Delhi. Construction sites use similar machines to control dust. By attaching it to a truck, it can move around an area while it sprays. The city's environment minister says the city is eager to put more on the streets as soon as possible. Its manufacturer, CloudTech, says it shoots 100 liters a minute and can clear about 95% of airborne pollutants. However, environmental experts claim this isn't a way to combat pollution for the long term.
For the second year in a row, life expectancy in America declined in 2016 to 78.6 years. Big reason for that is more than 63,000 overdose deaths, many from opioids. Dr. John LaPook is here with more on all of this. Doctor, what stood out to you about this?
Well, Jeff, deaths from powerful synthetic opioids like fentanyl that are available on the street doubled in a single year, and they now surpass the death rate from painkillers like codeine, oxycodone, and hydrocodone. And those are the drugs that have been commonly overprescribed by doctors in the past. Now, doctors like me, we've been educated, cracking down on us, try to prescribe fewer of these opioids. But what do you do about drugs that are illegally obtained on the street or elsewhere? I mean, it's really a challenge.
Pope Francis is expected to give the final blessing at the funeral Thursday of Cardinal Bernard Law, the former Boston Archbishop who resigned in disgrace during the Catholic Church's sex abuse scandal, prompting outrage from abuse survivors. Francis's prominent role in the ceremony has fueled the controversy over the decision to grant Law a full cardinal's funeral at St. Peter's Basilica in the Vatican. Law, who died early Wednesday in Rome following a long illness, became a symbol of the sex abuse scandal after a Boston Globe investigation revealed that he and other bishops had covered up child abuse by priests in the Boston Archdiocese.
Now, if you own an iPhone, then some bad news, I'm afraid. After years of head-scratching and speculation as to why older models were becoming slower, Apple has finally admitted to being the culprit. This has not gone down well with users, with some accusing the tech giant of deliberately slowing down older devices to push them to buy newer models. Others have complained about the firm's lack of transparency. But Apple insists it's a necessary feature to prolong the life of aging batteries and prevent random shutdowns. However, some users are still unconvinced and have suggested they may switch to Apple's arch-rival Samsung.
So we've got a winter storm that is trudging across the United States right now. The worst is yet to come, but we've already had some pretty significant impacts out in the west, the northwest, and parts of the northern plains. We've had a lot of car accidents being reported, especially out in Utah. A lot of power outages as well. At least 1,500 homes and businesses lost power near Reno because of the gusty wind, and also near Bend, Oregon. Nearly 2,000 people lost power there as well. But I think we're going to have a lot more power outages through the Northeast. This is a radar view of what just happened with the storm. This is what's going to happen. So this is going to take us through the future. And you notice we start through the overnight. This storm is just starting to wrap up, all right? So it's going to get a lot more concentrated. It goes through the upper Midwest, the Great Lakes, and this is the biggest problem area. When we get into the Northeast, you see that purple stuff on the map? That is ice, all right? So there's going to be some heavy snow, and then there will be ice that will fall on top of that. This is going to be in parts of New England. This will be from Connecticut up through Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine. And you notice these snow totals that we're forecasting. Keep in mind, on top of that snow, ice is going to fall. I think we're going to have a lot of power outages in the Northeast. And remember, the timing with this is it starts as snow on Friday afternoon. It'll change over to ice overnight, and then still some ice around on Saturday. 1/4 to 1/2 inch. That's some serious stuff, guys.
The stars are brightly shining.
Amid the bustle of the holiday season, one man in blue paused and sang.
Sin and error pining.
While he was on foot patrol, Officer Jeremy Turner stopped to share his rendition of "Oh Holy Night." Turner studied music at the University of Southern Maine before becoming a man of the law. And judging from the response his solo received, he's still got it. Merry Christmas, officer.